Welcome back. We have a special treat, and it's Peter Gammons from ESPN and the Boston Globe and baseball everywhere. Peter, let's talk about the state of the Red Sox right now. I mean, obviously, Dan Duquette came in, it's his first year. Right now, people might think he's not doing a very good job because the Red Sox are stumbling, but I think you would agree that there's no question this is a good move for the Red Sox in the long haul.
It's very important. I mean, rebuilding an organization is a 5-year project. I mean, and the Red Sox have just plugged from day to day and saying, well, if we just get a little bit better, you know, the fans will still like us. We'll have Nesson. We'll sell the concessions, and they've done that for so long that they've ended up with a team. I mean, let's face it. The last 3 years, they have the 3rd worst record in the American League. It's time for them to start rebuilding, and from an overall picture. And this is something they haven't done for a long time. They basically lived with a 50s and 60s organization for years, and now they've finally gotten to start to try to tie it from the top down to the bottom, and it's a long-term process.
And we've seen already in these first few months of the Duquette regime lots of changes, but it's just going to continue, isn't it? Because as you said, we're going from total old school to maybe one of the most progressive minds in the game in Dan Duquette.
No question, and I think it's really important. I think this is the style, the way the game, the direction of the game. I mean, managing and coaching is teaching. And I mean, when you look, it's nothing that new. I mean, when you look, to me, the greatest coordinator and teacher in the business, George Kissel with the Cardinals, and you watch the drills that they do with all their young guys, it's what teachers do. They come up with creative ways to keep things from being boring. And I just watched him a year ago when he was converting Greg Jeffries to first base. And it was amazing to think that he could have Greg Jeffries rolling in his face in the mud in the morning, thinking that he really enjoyed it. And it's part of it. And you have to start to do that. You have to start to teach and to coach. And there's been a tendency in the Red Sox to sort of say, well, you roll the balls out and say, all right, we're going to let them play. But if they don't play, well, then it, A, no good, or B, there's something wrong with them. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that the Montreal people all tell me is that don't ever say to Duquette, this guy's a bad guy, because there's some closet for every one of us. I mean, it's just a matter of directing somebody in the right direction. There isn't any one of us who hasn't had problems. And to get the best out of people is really important, and forget the personality.
And you said something to me before. You said that Duquette believes he can teach anybody anything. I mean, it's that kind of mentality.
And really give people a chance. Teach them and give them a chance and give them a full opportunity. And if a guy has quote unquote failed, because that's such a negative word, and it's a word thrown out a lot in baseball, and unfortunately tagged on certain people. But if a guy has not succeeded, we'll say, or please someone in another organization, it doesn't mean that he isn't redeemable, and that there isn't talent involved somewhere along the line. I mean, I take a guy close to my heart, I guess, Eric Wedge. I mean, yeah, he's bounced around a little bit, but I think we all know, if we ever saw him come along in the beginning, that if Eric Wedge had been healthy in the right situation, he might be an established star. He just had things happen to him at the wrong place at the wrong time, as opposed to his college roommate, Mike Lansing, who had his injury problems happen while he was at Wichita State. He got healthy when he got out, so he got healthy at the right time.
And there's a whole other aspect to the Duquette thing, though, too. You talked about the teaching, but there's also the computer ideas and the information, and he really, I believe, is into computers, information, looking at everything he can look at to get a better read on the situation.
No question. One of the things he said when he took over, he said, they don't have the information go all the way back to high school. I want background stuff on this family, so that if there were problems, for instance, can we address them? Did he come from a very stable family background? All the different things that sociologically you'd like to look into a guy, just so that you know where you might be able to help and bring it out of a guy. This is what, basically, it's what college coaches do, particularly in basketball and football. And he's bringing that a little bit to baseball. And I think that's so important. But you hear it more and more from young general managers. I mean, you talk to Duquette, you talk to Jim Bowden, you talk to Kevin Malone, you talk to most of the Dave Dombrowski. If you're talking about a player, you know, they're playing with their computers and they have the names up and they have all this information on guys and they have all the reports right there. I mean, for instance, just use an example. One day, this week, I was talking to Bowden about a prospect in another organization. And without even, I could hear he hit, 1, 2, 1, 2, a couple of things. But right in the middle of the sentence, he had the 6 or 7 reports, 6 or 7 times people have been to see him, reports on him, some other background checks on the guy. I mean, in the past, I mean, with the Red Sox, they got a couple of things from the Bureau, but they never believed in professional scouting. And I really think that what the Red Sox are doing is simply catching up to what made Toronto and made Pat Gillick the dominant guy in baseball, because he figured this out 20 years ago and put them way ahead. Now other teams are copying it.
Is there a downside to all this? Because you seem to sometimes write on the progressive side, but then you do go back to the old school. And I was wondering, obviously a lot of old school people are going to say, damn the computers, damn all this stuff, too much information is misinformation. Do you see a possible downside to any of this that Duquette's doing?
No, because I think Dan can analyze it. I think it all depends on what kind of person you have analyzing it. I mean, if you read Bob Woodward's book about Clinton, The Agenda, Clinton is an absolutely incredible intellectual who takes in all this information. The problem is that he doesn't, he clutters once he gets the information. Some people can take information and just make a decision. Some others can't, but Duquette's a very definitive person, and he can draw a conclusion. And that's really the important thing. Can you draw a conclusion? I like the old school stuff. I think more and more I just like every bit of information I can get. Then it comes down to going out and watching them play. But all that other stuff, all the information you get can lead you to a truth. Oh. And the fun thing about baseball is there's nothing black and white about it. I mean, you come down to the end, and it still comes down to how they play and how certain teams mesh together. And I think it's really fun to see players that are cast aside in certain places end up being terrific players in others, and how they fit certain situations. And it still comes down to they're all human beings.
All right, to wrap this up, because we want to let you go, but I want to talk about what it's going to be here at Pawtucket. And already we've seen Duquette brought in a lot of guys. He signed a lot of guys, and I think a lot were his computer information. Veteran players at AAA level who were better than other people thought. But you'd probably say that's not what we're going to see in the future. We're probably going to see all the scouting, all the kids, and then we're going to see a team of prospects here. Would you agree with that?
To a degree, but I think you'll still fill in. I mean, nobody has 15 prospects. I mean, unless it's a miracle team. And people have said to me that Harrisburg last year was one of the best minor league teams they ever saw. Well, Harrisburg didn't have 15 or 18 surefire major leaguers either. So you bring guys in. I think you'll always see Duquette go out and find a guy that from another organization that he thinks somebody else has missed or deserves another chance. And I know, so I think you'll always see that mixture. And there's nothing wrong with having a few guys that know what it takes to play even on the AAA level, because there's still great baseball. And I've always believed that the last 5 guys on a major league team and about 8 guys on every AAA team are pretty much interchangeable, depending on the situation, what kind of chance they get. And I think he believes in that too. So that as long as you have that mix, it'll work. They'll try to develop as many prospects as they can, but I think you'll still see that mixture. And it can never hurt a young player to have someone around who's experienced, hitting that wall on the way up.
Well, that's what we're trying to do here, actually, on Talking Paw Sox, is I'm trying to learn from the master, Peter Gammons, and how to do it both on print and on TV as well.
So,
thanks, Peter.
Okay.
And we'll be back with more of Talking Paw Sox right after this.